Take the prayer, please. Master of all worlds, highest power, merciful parent of compassion, in your presence, eternal one, source of strength for us, as you have been for our ancestors, we very humbly acknowledge you. What are we? What is our life that you have done such great kindness to us? Therefore, we place our appeals before you, so that you may forgive and absolve us of all our faults and failings. Let our faults never become barriers between us and you. And may it be your desire to prepare our hearts to feel awe and love for you. May you listen to these words of ours. May you open our encumbered hearts to the mysteries of your Torah. May this, our study, be a source of pleasure before your throne of glory, like sweet incense. May you shower down upon us the light of our soul's source in all the ways by which we define ourselves. May the sparks of your holy servants, through whom you have revealed these words to the world, shine and sparkle. May their merit, their ancestors' merit, and the merit of their Torah, their innocence and their holiness, stand for us, so as to prevent us from stumbling when we study these words. In their merit, may our eyes be illumined by what we study, as in the saying of the sweet singer of Israel, "Open my eyes, that I may gaze into wonders of your Torah." May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. For it is the Eternal who grants wisdom. It is from his mouth that knowledge and understanding issue forth. Na 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 na. Oh na na na. Oh, na 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 na. Oh na na na. Oh na 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 na. Oh na 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 na. Na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na na na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na na na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na na na. Ah na 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 na. Ah na na na. Ah na 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 na. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. We're on page 345. And just to, I don't know if we actually read these last words, did we? We did. All right. I trust you, Larry. If you say we did, then we did. So the message here is that study of Torah is necessary as a support, a sustaining defense against the destruction of Jerusalem, against the destruction of everything that is good. Jerusalem is Shekhinah. Jerusalem is the divine presence in the world. Without the study of Torah, we have no hope of preserving and protecting Shekhinah or Jerusalem itself. We'll read Rabbi Asa one more time, what he says. Rabbi Asa said, somebody want to, is that Beryl saying that she wants to read? Am I mistaken?
No, I just was, it wasn't a retraction. It was trying to get my microphone.
There you go. So Rabbi Asa said, the second line on the top of 345.
Rabbi Asa said, everyone knows this, and so it is written. Unless Yud-Heh Vav-Heh watches over the city, those engaged in Torah, by virtue of whom the holy city endures, not by the mightiest men in the world. So, unless Yud-Heh Vav-Heh watches over the city, the watchman guards in vain.
Okay, so all the military might in the world is meaningless if God's Torah is not what our focus is in our occupation. The Torah is identified, the Torah Shebechtav, God's divine Torah, is also identified with the name Yud Hey Vav Hey. So that's the verse. Unless Yud Hey Vav Hey watches over the city, unless the divine manifestation expression through Torah, unless that's watching over the city, then the city cannot endure. And the city is also Shekhinah herself. What do you make of everyone knows this? Rabbi said, Rabbi Chia awoke, he went and he told this word to the sages. And what's Rabbi Asa's reaction? Very dismissive, isn't it? But this is a special experience that Rabbi Chia had. He fell asleep and he had a vision of Elijah telling him this message. And then Rabbi Yosef says, yeah, we all know this. There's nothing new here. Is that what he's saying? Isn't that a little weird? Unfortunately, there's no note right when you need it. So what do we make of Rabbi Yosef's, and he says, look, here it is. I got it straight out of a verse. What do you need Elijah to tell you about this? It's right here. It's an explicit verse, in Psalms. So, yeah.
I suppose a more positive spin would be, he could be saying, maybe you thought it was a dream. You're not sure if it was real or not. Everybody knows this. It was real.
Thank you very much for trying to patch things up. You should be a surgeon. You should be a surgeon. You could patch up all kinds of no. I don't think it works that way. I don't think it works that way. I think that we have here is a kind of a puncturing of Rabbi Chia's experience and bringing it back down to earth. You know, it's a kind of a, you know, saying to Rabbi Chia, you don't need a heavenly vision to tell you how much the world depends on Torah. You shouldn't need some special visitation from heaven to teach you that the world is in trouble unless you hold on to Torah. This is something that everybody knows. Everybody, in other words, who's everybody? The people that know it, they're the people that count as everybody, right? If you don't know it, you're not part of the everybody, right? Everybody knows this, meaning everybody that I consider an anybody knows this. Yeah, Larry.
Two things. One is, I don't know, where did Rabbi Yesa come from? Because I thought that was Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Chizkiah who were sitting under the trees in the field of Yoko Ono or whatever it was, and that they fell asleep, and suddenly Rabbi Yesa walks in. Where was he?
No, read the first sentence on the page.
Rabbi Chia awoke. And he tells it to the sages. So
and he went. Read the words. And then he went and he told this word to the sages. So he goes back to Rashbi's yeshiva, where all the other companions, the other associates, the Chevraya, are hanging out, and he reports this thing that he experienced while he was on the road. So he's back where everybody else is.
I see. So it's back in the yeshiva. The other thing I was going to say is that I used to listen a lot to these stories by Shlomo Carlebach. You know, he's a really great storyteller. And in the middle, he always would say something, and everybody knows that.
Right, but he wouldn't say, he goes, and everybody knows.
And everybody knows.
And everybody knows, and everybody knows.
Right, and I always wondered, like, how come I'm the only one who didn't know it?
You know it, you just didn't know that you know it. Right, that's the point. Yeah, wait, who's saying? Rich?
Yeah. Who are the mightiest?
And then say the next. Go ahead.
Who are they, who's he referring to by the mightiest men in the world?
So the
Are those
mightiest
the sages?
No, the mightiest men there, well, yes, the mightiest men there are not by the mightiest men in the world. So if you look at 206, this is a rephrasing of this midrash. We'll read the midrash. Go ahead. Beryl, it's your job.
Not by the mightiest men in the world. Rabbi
Yehuda Nasiya
sent Rabbi Asi and Rabbi Ami on a mission to improve the cities of the land of Israel. They entered a city and said to the residents, "Bring us the guardians of the city." They brought them the commander of the watch and the guardsmen. They, the rabbis, explained, "Are these the guardians of the city? These are the destroyers of the city." They asked, "Who then are the guardians of the city?" They replied, "The teachers of Bible and Mishnah, who meditate upon, teach, and preserve Torah day and night. In accord with what is said, meditate on it day and night. And similarly, unless Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh builds the house, its builders labor in vain. Unless Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh watches over the city, the watchman guards in vain."
Right. So the mightiest men are the, yeah.
See.
The mightiest men, Rich's point is that it goes both ways. Who do you think the mightiest men are? We normally think the mightiest men are the guards, the people that have the biggest military budget or the greatest number of forces and so on and so forth. No, there you are, the cops. And by the way, what's the Jewish police officers fellowship society? The
In Alaska.
the Shomrei society, the guardians, right? Like Shomrei Emunah, the guardians of the faith. So yeah, so you think it's that? No. Lo b'chayil v'lo b'choach. Yim beruchi. So God says to the priest, to Yoshua, no, don't think it's with the military might. No, it's my spirit. So the guardians, the mightiest men, you think that they're the physically mightiest men? No, those would be of no avail. What really is important is the mightiest Torah commitment is what's important. Wait, I saw about Nature Carta, right? Nature Carta is an ultra Orthodox group, very anti-Zionist, because they feel that the Zionists have been and are guilty of this cardinal sin of mistaking physical, material reality with spiritual reality, and therefore they're completely anti the state and anti everything that the state does. Yeah, Sandra.
Well, I'm still struck with Rabbi Yesa. I think I'm wondering if he doesn't have much respect for Rabbi Chia. I saw it very negatively, this everyone knows. I saw it as almost sarcastic, nasty. And I'm just wondering, because I don't remember, now I haven't been here for every moment, and even when I was present, I don't know. But I don't remember anybody ever being dismissive in this way. So I'm just struck. Is he some special guy? And then he should be even kinder, but I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't think he has any special standing here that would entitle him to be nasty to anybody. And as you say, nobody is entitled to be nasty, no matter what kind of station they occupy. And that's for us now to think about it. Is it a nastiness? Is he really being unpleasant when he does that, or is he just being of a different opinion? And as I said before, trying to say to him, okay, Rabbi Chia, you think you had this as a special revelation, but guess what? It's something that's out there quite a bit, and you shouldn't be surprised by it. Can you disagree and dismiss somebody else's story without being snippy and disrespectful? That's a good question. I mean, obviously, we don't have any tone of voice here. We're not watching this happening. It's all going to play out in our own imaginations. David.
Well, Rav Yesa is not here to ask, but maybe he's affirming. Yes, and so it is written, unless, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't have that first phrase, then we could take it, much more neutrally. And if I don't know, I don't know if this question was bothering anybody until I raised it. So maybe I'm just causing the trouble. Everybody just, goes along and didn't find it so challenging. But I don't think that
I didn't like it.
Okay. So
and also
that's what I want to say is, what do we do with our not liking it? How much do we want to dig into that? Yeah, Sandra.
I'm wondering, Rabbi Chia just had a vision, and maybe it's just my psychologist hat. Is he jealous? These are still human. Yes, these are still human beings, no matter who they are. But I think you know, I think words are parsed carefully in this writing. And I think saying something like that requires a little thought about all the possibilities.
Right. It would be a little ironic for this fellowship, for this collection of people, to promote a voice that's anti-mystical experience. A little, forget about being nice or not nice. It's a little unexpected that this chevraya, as they're called in the Zohar, this fellowship of people. I mean, isn't this part of their bread and butter? This is part of their spiritual sustenance. So it's something to raise at least one eyebrow on. But having a kind of a balance is possibly part of what the Zohar is saying is important. And just to reiterate something I said before, aggressive disagreement doesn't have to be personally insulting or taken that way. So, it's up in the air, exactly what's going on psychologically and interpersonally between Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yesa. But we should notice it. We should notice it. Yeah, David.
Does the original Aramaic shed any light on this?
No.
It's the same.
It's. I'll read to you what it
It
says.
occurs to me also to ask whether the next words are really "and so" it is written. Is there really an "and"?
Yes, there is. You have to trust Danny Matt a little bit. He happens to know exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
When he makes certain choices, you can, quibble or question it, but basically he is super accurate and responsible and thoughtful in his translation. The Aramaic is Amar Rabbi Yesa, which can be plausibly translated as Rabbi Yesa said. Kola yadinda, everyone knows this. Vehachihu, and so it is. So,
Rabbi, I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
So the vision that Rabbi Hia had was, basically, however bad things are getting, study more Torah. Maybe if you sages can just study more Torah, everything will work out. And what Rabbi Yesa is saying, if Yudhe Vave isn't watching over you, you're wasting your breath.
Not Yudhe Vave watching over you. He translates it specifically as engaging in Torah, right? You could watch it, oh God, if God's taking care of you, don't have no worries. No, he says Yudhe Vave watching over the city means those engaged in Torah, right? That's what he says there, second line in the paragraph.
I was reading the last line. So
no, but that's what he's explicating. Then he's putting out the entire verse. It's the same verse. So that's the idea. You have to understand, says Rabbi Yesa. Everybody understands this verse. It's not just that God from heaven is watching over everybody. No, God means studying Torah. Those are the guardians of the city, and that's that midrash that was quoted in the note. God is in his heaven and all's right with the world.
So I'm sorry though, I get that part, but the last sentence then I don't understand.
The last sentence is a completion of what he started with. Unless Yud-Heh Vav-Heh watches over the city, the watchman guards in vain.
And the watchmen being the sages.
No, that's what I was saying. It's the watchmen that people physically put up as their sense of what's going to guarantee.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and that's where it's the play. That's where he's flipping it over. That's where you think, and that's why, like I said, this is what he's flipping over. You think that the physical, material power is the watchman? No, it's us actively studying Torah. That's the watchman. Wait, Len says, isn't this the rationale for the Haredim that the Haredim use to avoid army service and have the state support them? That their study of, etc. The answer is yes. Yes, this is their application of this message, is their justification that if we don't sit and study Torah 24/7, then the mightiest army in the Middle East will be of no avail. We are actually preserving, protecting the Jewish people. So don't tell us that we're actually slackers and that we're, what's the word when something lives off something else, parasites. We're actually doing the real work. We're the ones who are actually saving the Jewish people. Yeah, that's the way they see it. Yep. Yeah. Unfortunately, maybe if this goes back to our painful discussion last week, maybe if they really were doing a good job studying Torah, maybe they would be saving the Jewish people. All right.
Excuse me, one more question.
Yeah.
So, but I'm thinking if we're in partnership with the divine, then we study Torah to the best of our ability.
Right.
We have a responsibility to take care of ourselves as well. And I see that we need to do both. Some study the Torah, or maybe all study the Torah, but we also have to be the watch people. I don't see it in the parental way, because we're in partnership in some way.
No, the watch people meaning what?
Well, the watch people, I think, are important. I think that's our responsibility.
Which watch people? Which, like Rich is saying, who are you referring to? The rabbis?
Whoever we elect to be our army. I think there's the army of the soul, of the spiritual. We study the Torah and we take care of ourselves on the physical plane, right? Because this is our domain. Right. We're supposed to be responsible here.
Right. So
I don't think it's either or.
You're right. I think that's correct, and that's where the struggle constantly comes about. When the Talmud, you don't need the Zohar. The Talmud, you don't need Neturei Karta, and you don't need the Haredim today. The Talmud, imagines that when Joshua has this night encounter with a scary angel that has a sword in his hand, and the angel says "V'hagita b'yom b'layla," the famous verse that all the Torah community recites, that you should meditate and engage in Torah day and night. The Talmud explains Joshua comes into the land. He's mustering the troops. Everybody's getting ready to start attacking. So guess what? We actually have an army, right? In our Torah readings of last week and this week, we're setting up, a military encampment. So we didn't set up a yeshiva. We didn't set up, just, okay, let's everybody now take out your Zohar and let's study, through the night, and then, the land will be ours. So of course it's both. But what the Talmud imagines is that in their frenzy, their concern to set up everything because they knew that the battle was imminent, they didn't also study Torah. So somehow the balancing is essential, that you need to have both of them. And of course, what the Haredim say is, you go get killed. We'll do the other part.
Right.
So that's it. Yeah, Mark.
Don't we have to take into consideration the historical context?
Okay.
That pietism arises in the face of perceived powerlessness. It's an attempt to try to find an alternative route of power. And I think you have to take that into consideration, especially when you look at Jewish history, starting with the fall of the Second Temple and the attempt to reconstruct a sense of agency in a world where there was no realistic hope of military agency. Now, what's interesting in Jewish history is the substitution of economic agency as the surrogate for military agency. Because what you have throughout Jewish history is Jews marching along in two basic columns, the rich and the poor. And the poor were obligated to study, and the rich were obligated to support the poor studying. And I wonder if that isn't part of the dynamic of what's going on in Israel now. Although now you're substituting military plus the whole technological inventiveness of the Israeli economy, that there's still the sense that they have to support this second kind of agency, this pietistic agency.
I think that those things factor in for sure what you're saying. I think that the issue of power is a major problem. I mean, any contemporary Jewish thinker that has anything worthwhile to say about a modern Jewish experience puts this front and center as the challenge of the Jewish people today. What do we do now that we actually have power? How do we use it? What do we do with it? I want to just modify or add to what you say. I don't think pietism can be exclusively explained as a as a response or as an outgrowth of powerlessness. Pietism is also sometimes a protest against power, not only of the power of the other, oppressor from the outside, but also a revulsion against the use of power by one's own community. That also can be a motivation for pietism. The power is in there, but it works in every kind of way. I don't know if I mentioned it, that I mentioned this video that some people have shared that they found somewhere of Rabbi Soloveitchik speaking about Israel. Okay, so I'll mention it. There was an audio, not a video, an audio. There's an audio recording of Rabbi Soloveitchik speaking in 1958. So it's 10 years after the establishment of the State of Israel. And he's speaking in an interfaith setting. No, I don't have a link. Somebody that I know on Facebook put it up. I can try to track it down. But, if you want to Google, maybe you'll find it. Put in, Rabbi J.B. Soloveitchik, 1958, power, State of Israel, the whole schmear. Anyway, what he says in a couple of minutes of the video, of the audio, is that he's worried. That he's worried that we were able to be moral and wonderful for 2,000 years because we had no power.
Oh.
And he's very worried about what's going to happen in Israel with what it's going to do with its power. So he said that over 60 years ago.
Rabbi, if I could put
one more second, just one more second. And he wasn't the first, and he wasn't the loudest voice. Anybody that wants to see prophetic, heartbreaking, discussions should look up, Yeshayahu Leibovich, who cried out like a real prophet, like an Isaiah, from before before the state was established, and and yelled and screamed about our moral challenges. Yeah, Mark.
I just want to put one more thing in the mix. Forget about Israel for a second. Just think of the American experience.
Mm-hmm.
As Jews were permitted to exercise, for example, academic power, were permitted to become educated, they become an enormous force in all of the intellectual pursuits, and they use that power in all sorts of good ways, perhaps, and maybe in not such good ways. So again, you have this not this ambivalence, but this seesaw between a commitment to the exercise of power in ways that society accepts against the exercise of power when the Jews are being significantly rejected, as they were in Eastern Europe. And then you have the whole Hasidic movement as an alternative to the exercise of actual temporal power. So it doesn't have to be military power. It can even be intellectual power.
Right.
I mean, a place like Montclair State University has a very small Jewish population of students, and I would say a majority of Jewish faculty. And that's typical of universities throughout the country. Jews have just completely taken over the academic pursuits. And you know, that's a real exercise of power.
It sounds like an anti-Semitic website that we're on here. Yeah, go ahead.
No, but I know from my own experience. I mean, you know, you have.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying
You have a half a dozen students in Hillel, and 50 Jewish faculty who will want to be the advisors.
What can I tell you? What can I tell you? We're a pretty talented people, and we end up, like you say, if we're pushed down here, we end up like a gas or something. We find an outlet someplace else, and we do well there. And not just academically, politically as well, and militarily. If you read the medieval histories of Muslim and Christian Spain, we actually had certainly the Muslim experience early on. We were viziers and we were generals and we were all kinds of leaders. Even though theoretically we were second-class citizens, talent will out.
So I just want to say one thing, and then I'm going to stop. So one way to look at this is that the way the power of the Jewish people is preserved during the worst periods of Jewish powerlessness is to continue building the intellectual capital through study of Talmud and Torah. Now, that's a very non-pietistic and even cynical way of looking at it.
Right. That's a modern secularization of these ideas. And there's no question that modern Jewish experience is shot full of the secularization of Jewish values. So that my son, the doctor, my son, the professor, is the translation into secular terms of my son, the Talmud Chacham, my son, the Talmudic scholar, and my son, the rabbi. But we should just understand it's a translation and it's a transformation. It's a secularization. What's happening in the Zohar is not about intellectual achievement. It's about spiritual and moral achievement. The Zohar actually, in many ways, was not that invested in Talmudic pyrotechnics. They were the second-class scholars. They were, mostly. Moshe Dell has a whole thing about that the Kabbalists were the secondary elite. The Talmudists were the primary elite in the Jewish community in terms of the official, rich people are rich, but in terms of what was held up as a model. And the Zohar again and again and again, doesn't get into Talmudic argumentation. It gets into clear, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like direct apprehension of a spiritual truth. So in a certain sense, the Zohar is almost anti-intellectual. And that's part of maybe also the Rabbi Yosef. Everybody knows this. Either you know it or you don't know it. It's not going to help you to, to study a lot of books or to engage in pilpul. That's not what the Zohar is trying to do. The Zohar is not trying to sharpen your mind. It's trying to open your heart. All right. So now we're going to start another little section where we have another verse from our story of Jacob, and move, into discussing this other part. So Jacob, after his vision, he moves on. He comes into civilization, and now we have the verse in the inset there. Okay, Beryl, back to you.
He looked, and here a well in the field, and there were 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. Rabbi Yehuda opened a Psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom.
Okay, so what's happening in that particular, so that's the verse in the Jacob story, and now we have our midrashic usual way of doing things. We take a verse from someplace far away, and eventually we'll make our way back. So Rabbi Yehuda now starts with this verse that introduces David's prayer, but the verse gives context to the psalm. David is running away from his own son, from Avshalom. Why? What's going on? Anybody remember? Anybody do 929? So what's going on? Larry, you wanted to say?
He was, Absalom was in rebellion against him, in revolt, and he has to flee, military retreat. It's a military retreat, and he should theoretically be in great distress, but instead he recites.
Don't give me the rest of the Zohar. Just let's get the story of what the situation is. The situation is we have a coup d'etat, and David is being deposed by his own son, and he's on the run because his son Avshalom has collected serious support, priestly support and military support. David's own generals have betrayed him. So there's really, he's in dire straits, and he's on the run. This is not like they're engaged together, in hand-to-hand combat or something like that. He's on the defensive. He's in trouble, and Avshalom is going to take over. Eventually, there's divine intervention, and David is saved. But right at this moment, he is in super deep trouble. So that's the context. Okay. So now, Larry, with your permission, we'll let the Zohar, unfold this. Go ahead.
The companions have been aroused by this verse. But a Psalm of David, why did he utter a song? If it was because his own son rose up against him, then he should have wailed a lamentation, since a little from one's own hurts more than a lot from another.
Right. So which is here what's called the Lashon Ham'ata. Right? It's talking, to say the least. If this was anybody else who was putting David to flight, that would be bad enough. It's his own son who's threatening him. So this is when David's going to sing a song? What the heck is going on? Right? So this is the Zohar's question. And it's that question that will then be able to help us appreciate the arousal of the companions in understanding what's truly going on. Yeah, Larry.
I'm not saying it's an unfair question, but it's kind of an unfair question because there are many kinds of psalms, and Psalm 3 is a psalm of distress. Just because it's a psalm doesn't mean it's happy. There are many psalms in which you cry out to God. Does that mean it's not a psalm? It's a psalm. It's just a different kind of psalm. But I'm not saying it's unfair. It's just that's the rabbinic way of doing
Right,
things.
right. If we just wanted to look at it, in our own kind of mundane way, that's what we would say. We're not the companions. What can I tell you? The companions,
Right.
but even from a mundane, you're running away. Can't you sing your psalm later? Meanwhile, get the hell out of there. Go save yourself. So, and then take your violin or your harp, or your flute, and compose a lamentational, heartbreaking song, but right now, move. So, what is this sense of inspiration, right? For the Zohar, of course, that's the other point. To say these psalms means that David is taken over by a Holy Spirit. He's taken over by divine inspiration. So when you're in distress, the Holy Spirit doesn't sit on you, and then you're deprived of divine inspiration. So, for instance, just again looking forward, we're in the book of Bamidbar in our Torah reading cycle, and the book of Bamidbar right now we're just like getting started. Then in a couple of weeks, we're going to have the crashing down of the Jewish people's marching, because they all chicken out. And then the rest of the book of Bamidbar talks about all of the dismal experience that we have in the desert. And there is pretty much nothing, there's no new quote unquote Torah in the book of Bamidbar. And it's only when we get to Devarim that there's this explosion by Moses of all of a sudden pouring out words of Torah. And the tradition says, because for 38 years after the debacle with the spies, Moses was so depressed that he didn't have divine inspiration to be able to share more Torah. There was nothing left. The rabbis say, Ein Shechina Shora, Mishe Libo Atzavo, that his heart, is hurting him, and he's depressed or sad. So yes, in human terms, there are many laments and many kinds of things, but there's a kind of an assumption here, and of course the Zohar has its own agenda by turning this upside down. But that's part of what it's looking at. So how could this this inspired song be created in these terrible moments? Yet, go ahead, Carol.
Yet, a psalm of David, he uttered a song intentionally. First, because he thought that the Blessed Holy One had deferred his sin to that world. So as soon as he saw that he wanted to collect his due from him here, he rejoiced.
Okay. So the first answer is that this is part of the divine accounting. We've had this a little bit before, that if we have sins that we have to expiate, either we pay for them in this world or we pay for them in the next world. And woe to us if we have to pay for them in the next world. So if we can somehow wipe them clean in this world, then when we get to the next world, it'll be unadulterated, joy and beauty and spiritual elevation. Otherwise, it's going to be spoiled. It's going to be curdled a little bit by the fact that we will need to be chastised and punished. So what David says here is he's walking around with guilt, with a heavy sense of guilt. The guilt is basically the sin with Bathsheba, right? And his question is, how and when will I pay this off? How will I be able to finally get atonement? Am I going to have to look, into the next world, into the fires of hell, and go through excruciating, terrible distress to be able to be cleansed? And now he has this terrible situation in this world. His own son is trying to kill him. So he, from the Zohar's perspective, he rejoices. Wow, this is great. This pain and suffering that I'm having in this world will finally give me the atonement, so that in the next world I'll be okay. This is the Zohar's calculus on behalf of David. Okay, take it or leave it. Yeah, Jen.
Is that conception shared anywhere else? We just read in the Torah about making restitution to God if you couldn't make restitution to the person you offended. So is it anywhere else where it just says, suffer and that's going to be what cleanses you?
It's in the Talmud. It's in the Talmud, and the Zohar inherits it from the Talmud. That there's this concept that suffering of any kind is cleansing and atoning.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Now we'll get to the part that links all of this back to our own text.
Further, he saw that some in the world who were greater than he had fled, all of them alone. Jacob fled, as is written. Jacob fled in the land of Aram.
To the land of Aram.
The land of Aram. Jacob fled to the land of Aram, fleeing alone. Moses fled, as is written. Moses fled from Pharaoh's presence, fleeing alone. But when David fled, all those rulers of the earth, all the mighty of the earth, and chiefs of Israel fled along with him, surrounding him on the right and on the left, guarding him in every direction. Seeing such honor, he uttered a song.
Okay, so now we have a different kind of calculation. And this, of course, brings us back to the Jacob story. I'm not the first person who's been in trouble, right? I'm not the first good guy. Now we have not so much the sense of sin and guilt, but even better people than me have had to endure the indignity and the pain and suffering of running for their lives. And they ran away without any help, without any other companion, without any other support, alone. Jacob had to run away alone. Moses had to run away alone. David, if you look at the story back in the Bible, in the Tanakh, even though Avshalom has a tremendous number of supporters, there are still, and it's very moving actually when you read that story, there are the people that decide to remain loyal to the old man, right? Even though Avshalom seems to be the new guy in town, and there's enthusiasm and people, the masses are jumping for joy for this charismatic new person. There are some people, and as I said, he gets tremendous support from some very powerful people. There are people from David's court who stick with him, and they don't abandon him. And says the Zohar, that's what he takes comfort in. That's what he's able to say, you know what? It could be worse. Better people than me have had it worse. I'm in a terrible situation, but I am loved and supported, and I'm not alone. I'm not alone. So, whatever you want to make of the way the Zohar imagines how these things, even out or whatever, there's something I think that is pretty touching about that kind of contemplation, right? That the appreciation of the extreme distress that that he imagines, or that the Zohar imagines that he imagines, went on with Jacob and with Moses, fleeing for their lives with nothing and no one to help them, right? Of course, except for God, but that's not being explicitly stated in the stories with Jacob, obviously, until he gets to the vision of the ladder. With Moses, not so much, right? It's gonna wait with Moses, right? Moses doesn't get this reassuring revelation so fast, right? What is Moses' immediate experience? What happens the next thing you know, after we know that Moses has to run away from Pharaoh who wants to kill him, which is also a family thing, right? David is running away from his son, Jacob is running away from his brother, Moses is running away from his stepfather. What's the next scene with Moses?
Comes to a well.
Correct, right. So we're going to get there in a half a second, right? That's the next sentence that we get to. Okay, so David is accompanied by all these other loyal retainers and advisors. And we have the same kinds of statements again. All the mighty of the earth. Right? Remember, we were just before putting them down. Right? Mighty of the earth, forget it. If you're not studying Torah, there is no mighty of the earth. Right? And now David is taking some solace in the fact that he has a bunch of starkers that are still by his side. So back to Sandra's point, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You can't totally dismiss physical reality and physical might. Okay, surrounding him on the right and the left, guarding him in every direction. So what does this mean to conjure up for us in another way? Let's flip it back the other way. He is taking solace from the mighty of the earth, the physical, political, military forces that are still with him, priestly forces that are still with him. But we always need to remember David is Shekhinah. David is Shekhinah. David is Malchut. David is royalty, and David is the incarnation of the divine presence as it finds itself in this messy world. And so surrounding him on the right and on the left, guarding him in every direction, this is also an image of Shekhinah. That's what Shekhinah, is. All of the other aspects of the divine are to the right of her and to the left of her, pouring in their energies, pouring in their force to strengthen her and to vitalize her. So at the same time that this is, a very human, with the psychological aspects of it and the political aspects of it, very human drama, it's also a reflection of this theme that we've had already for the last page or two, the precarious status of Shekhinah, the precarious status of Jerusalem. How is Jerusalem going to be saved, protected? Now, what is going to actually be the fate of the divine project here on earth? And David instantiates that question. Right? If Avshalom kills him, that's it. Then forget about it. There is no future for humanity from the Zohar's perspective. Okay, but we've been brought back now to the image of flight, and specifically back to Jacob. Go ahead, Rabbi Yehuda continued.
Rabbi Yehuda continued, they all encountered this well. Why not David? Because at the time it was hostile toward David, so he didn't encounter it. Jacob and Moses were welcomed joyously by this well, who was eager to approach them. As soon as it saw them, water rose up toward them, like a woman delighting with her husband.
Okay, so as I said, David is Shekhinah, but David is also David. And so the Zohar says, let's follow these parallels. David has imagined, I'm running away, Jacob ran away. I'm running away, Moses ran away. Okay, so what happened in those other cases? The next scene after they run away is they encounter a well. Where's my well? How come David doesn't encounter the well? The well is Shekhinah. The well is the well springs of life-giving water that we give to the flocks, to all living creatures that otherwise will not have any life at all. So Jacob comes to the well. Moses, what about me? What about David? We could ask it. And the answer is there's an estrangement. There's an alienation. David is supposed to be Shekhinah, but David is David. And David has sinned against his own self. David has sinned against God. We had, as Jen mentioned before, we had a little discussion earlier in Torah study that a human betrayal can be seen as a divine betrayal. So here is David, who is in trouble because of his failing to be a person of righteousness and a person of honor and a person of truth. So there's at least some, even though eventually, guess what? I'll give it away. David does get saved. But nevertheless, there's this tension that's going on here, and he's enduring this anguish and the punishment of knowing that his own son, who he loved so much, and of course but at the end, when Avshalom dies, you have this heart-rending reaction by David, the guy that's trying to kill him and finally dies. We should have an Az Yashir. We talked about this in other places, right? David should be dancing and for joy then. And instead, what happens when he finds out that Avshalom dies? He's so inconsolable. And he says, I wish it was me. I wish it was me. Avshalom, Beni. He goes through this terrible, terrible keening. He loves this guy. And this guy's trying to kill him. So something here is really, really out of whack. And David's connection with Shekhinah is out of whack. So he's not going to encounter the well. The well is not going to come to sustain him and save him. It's not going to be from the well that David will be saved. Jacob and Moses, on the other hand, they were welcomed by the well. As soon as it saw them, the water rose up toward them. So this is the image also from the Midrash, not just invented by the Zohar, that the deep well, it was so easy to draw the waters from the well because the well was excited and aroused and overjoyed to meet her lover, right? Jacob is her lover, and then Moses is her lover. And we have here this very, very erotic imagery where the woman is so aroused that the female waters, she's so turned on that she herself is wet with her arousal toward her lover. Okay, if you want to look at the 215, we'll get a little bit more of a scholarly citation of sources.
What arose like a woman delighting with her husband? Shekinah was eager to unite with Jacob and Moses, both of whom symbolize Tiferet and are described in the Zohar as her husband or master of the house. On the female waters, see Bereshit.
Rabbi, go ahead.
Rabbi Shimon, son of Elazar, said, every single handbreadth of water descending from above is met by 2 handbreadths emitted by the earth. What is the reason? Deep calls to deep. Rabbi Levi said, the upper waters are male, the lower female. The former cry to make to the latter, receive us. You are creatures of the Blessed Holy One, and we are his messengers. They immediately receive them, as is written, let the earth open like a female opening to a male.
Okay,
See,
then if you skip all of those citations, then in about 4 lines down, according to
according to the 2nd century Greek physician Galen, sperm is generated by both male and female.
and then you've got other
Now,
citations.
cities, Bahaya, Ben
Yeah. Okay, it's good.
Asher, and Sephono, and Adlak. Where are we now?
Babylon Talmud, Brachot 60a, Nida 31a.
The ascent of female waters is emphasized by Isaac Luria.
Okay, but so this is this image of mutual arousal, mutually being turned on, the wetness, the flow of the juices of each body responding to the other, and the well is aroused and turned on by seeing their mate, her mate, and that's Jacob and Moses. By rights, David should also have been in such a position, but no. At this point, David and Shekhinah are on the outs. Now, what's more distressing is Jacob and Moses, as the note explains, are partners with Shekhinah. Jacob and Moses are both identified with the male powers of God, the male lover of Shekhinah as the female lover, right? So there's that union that is experienced in the loving embrace of both running out to greet each other. With David, it's sad because David is the well. David and Shekhinah are not simply uniting 2 pieces together. David is supposed to be Shekhinah. So what you have here is a self-alienation. You have a self betrayal, and a situation where, because David acted the way he did, he can't be who he is, or he should be who he should be. And the struggle is that much more direct and internal, right? It's not the other lover that's turning their back. I have betrayed myself. An alienation within the divine, says Larry. Well, within the divine, in that the divine has given herself over to human carriage, right? The Merkava, the chariot carriage of God through human beings. And that's where the alienation comes in, right? Where the human has failed to hold up their side of the partnership. All right, a little bit more, tiny bit more.
Now you might say, look, Elijah fled and didn't encounter it. Why not?
Okay, so just have a second there. So Elijah, Eliyahu Hanavi, he also has to run away, but it's not a family situation there. It's a more open, the Achav wants to kill him, Jezebel wants to kill him, so he's in trouble. So he has to run away and hide, but he flees. And look, he also didn't encounter a well. What about that? The answer is, last line on that page.
Now you might say, look, Elijah fled and didn't encounter it. Why not? Because Elijah was below the well, not above, as were Moses and Jacob. So he is an angel carrying out missions, whereas since Jacob and Moses are above the well delights in them, rising towards them like a woman delighting in her husband, receiving him.
Okay, so that's the answer. The answer is, with all due respect to Elijah, Elijah is not a divine potency. Elijah is not part of the Merkava, of the human carriage of God. Elijah is a messenger of God, right? And that's pretty good. We had Elijah before. He lives forever. He comes in and does his missions, in all kinds of different places. But he's not David, and he's certainly not Jacob and Moses. He's not part of the divine array. So therefore, the issue is a different issue. The well is not going to be there for everybody. The well is about this question of the, reestablishing the stability within God as God relates to the world. And Elijah is below that. Elijah is, when I'm in trouble, guess what? I also don't encounter a well. Not that I'm comparing myself to Elijah, but no, God is not going to just poof, be there for every single person who's in trouble, although we pray to God and so on and so forth. But we have to understand that the drama that's going on with these other figures is on a higher and more extreme level. Right? And Elijah is below that. Okay, we're going to stop here. Next week, I'm away, so we won't be studying together. And hopefully we'll be able to resume the following week. Okay?
Thank you so much.